Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moment. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of The Great Ruler Season 2 Part 10 based on novel. So let's start. A bizarre world that seemed like the primal chaos. The sky wasn't lit, but there were frightening spiritual energies that fluctuated in this primal chaotic world. Because of the spiritual energy being too massive, spiritual clouds that were floating in the sky could be seen and would occasionally sway with moist spiritual clouds drifting about. This was the spiritual light realm, a bizarre small realm that was created by the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy and, at the same time, it was also the field of the hunting war. This place was filled with spiritual energy, but there was a lack of vitality here. The heavens and earth were quiet, without any sign of people. However, the desolation in this reasoning was abruptly disrupted today. There were beams of light that looked like locusts as they fell from the sky. Thereafter, they'd scattered to the outer areas of this realm. Although the spiritual light realm wasn't big, the scale of it still far surpassed the range of the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Hence, even if there was a large amount of students entering into this realm, everyone could still disperse throughout the area. On a small hill, two beams of light flew over and turned into two figures. They were Mu Chen and Luo Li. When they appeared, they were looking around in curiosity. Shortly after, they exclaimed out, "What nourished spiritual energy?" According to their speculations, the amount of spiritual energy in this spiritual light realm could be comparable to the 7th rank convergent spiritual array. But, the most fearsome point of it was that although the 7th rank convergent spiritual array wasn't small, it paled in comparison to this realm. However, this place lacks vitality. Mu Chen quickly sensed the defect in this realm. Although the spiritual energy in this region was exceptionally robust, there weren't any fluctuations of vitality. This realm was created not long ago and there wasn't any way to give birth to vitality. Henceforth, it is not possible to stay here for a long time. Luo Li swept her eyes around as she commented. Mu Chen lightly nodded his head. No wonder the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy did not open this place for students to cultivate. So, it was because this place wasn't suitable for life forms to stay. "Let us start by obtaining as much spiritual light as possible," said Mu Chen. The so-called spiritual light empowerment would have to depend on the obtained spiritual light for it to be graded. If a person had harvested a low amount of spiritual light, it would only waste the benefits of the spiritual light empowerment. In this spiritual light realm, if someone wanted to obtain spiritual lights, the only way would be to kill the spiritual spawns. The so-called spiritual spawns were actually humanoid forms of spiritual energy. Although those spiritual spawns don't possess any intellect, the strength that they possessed wasn't weak. According to the news that Mu Chen had received, the spiritual spawns were divided into 3 grades in this spiritual light realm. The lowest grade was an ordinary spiritual pawn, which possessed strength comparable to a heavenly fusion stage. The next would be spiritual knights, which possessed the strength of a heavenly transformation stage, and some powerful spiritual knights were comparable to heavenly transformation stage late phase. Spiritual knights of this level were highly popular with those students with powerful strength, as the spiritual lights that they would obtain would be the highest. As for the strongest spiritual spawns, they were known as spiritual kings. There weren't that many of them in the entire spiritual light realm and were also the most powerful existences. If they encountered one, they could only stay far away from it. Not only do the spiritual kings possess simple intellect, their strengths were comparable to a heavenly completion stage, which was extremely hard to deal with. In the history of the hunting war, there were very few people that would dare to provoke the spiritual kings. Although the spiritual light in the body of the spiritual kings was the best ingredient for spiritual light empowerment, their strength at the heavenly completion stage made everyone hold their step and would be filled with fear. "Let's go." Mu Chen identified his location before flying out. He didn't have a clear goal. However, the only thing that he could do was head towards the depths of the spiritual light realm. Due to the fact that every student participating in the hunting war would be gathered at that region, where the final guardians stood hold, their final enemy. 2 figures were streaking across the horizon, and because of the spiritual energy in this region being too dense, the speed of Mu Chen and Luo Li also suffered some restrictions. Pressure that was suppressing them would occasionally cause them to require constant circulation of spiritual energy to withstand that pressure. Mu Chen and Luo Li flew low to the ground and, after roughly 10 minutes, Mu Chen's eyes were grave as his speed started to slow down. Before him, there was a dazzling light that he could only see the direction of by narrowing his eyes. That light seemed to be a humanoid figure that was drifting around, along with the majestic spiritual energy that was being emitted from it. When Mu Chen sensed it, he seemed to have perceived a different fluctuation that was coming from it. Shortly after, that humanoid figure flew out and burst towards the direction of Mu Chen and Luo Li like a demon. Quite the decent speed. Mu Chen lightly smiled. The tip of his toes tapped and his figure flew out, crisscrossing with that light figure. However, the moment they crossed, Mu Chen placed his palm on the chest of that light figure. A violent spiritual energy surged out and instantly shattered it from the jolt. As the light figure crumbled, a faint red light shot out from its body. However, before that light could escape, Mu Chen had already snatched it with his hand. That lump of faint red light started to shrink into Mu Chen's hands, little by little, before turning into a sphere of light that was roughly the size of a dragon's eye, except the fact that it contained a rather pure spiritual energy. There wasn't any intent mixed in this spiritual aura and was exceptionally pure. This is the spiritual light? Mu Chen fiddled with it in curiosity as he became astonished. He never expected that such a small volume would contain such pure spiritual energy. This realm was, indeed, bizarre. It's just an ordinary spiritual pawn, said Luo Li. The spiritual light was too weak and could only be compared to a drop in the ocean for their spiritual light empowerment. Let's search slowly. Mu Chen was also a little helpless. After all, this was their first time participating in the hunting war and, hence, they weren't familiar with this area. Clearly, no one would be so kind as to share the precious information with them. Luo Li lightly smiled as she nodded. She wasn't worried at all. As long as she was with him, she wouldn't mind, even if she did not get any harvests. But even if she doesn't mind, Mu Chen had to. He knew how important this period of time was for Luo Li. Now that he can be with her, he would naturally do everything he could to make her stronger. This way, she won't have to suffer too much when she returned to the Luotian clan. Let's go take a look. Mu Chen looked ahead as he flew out, holding onto Luo Li. But in the next hour, Mu Chen and Luo Li duo didn't have much harvests as they would only, occasionally, encounter dozens of ordinary spiritual pawns and the spiritual light that they obtained could not be considered as robust. This made Mu Chen a little helpless. Was the spiritual spawns in the spiritual light realm so little? Then, how could they engage the spiritual light empowerment? Mu Chen made a flick with his finger and a spiritual pawn that was charging at his direction was reduced to dust. Thereafter, he grabbed the faint red light that flew out of it and curled his lips in helplessness. TSK, another ordinary spiritual pawn. He felt speechless. Their harvests for the next 2 to 3 hours wasn't too joyful either. Luo Li smiled as she followed him. She appeared rather relaxed as she left all the troublesome matters to Mu Chen. The spiritual energy ripples up ahead aren't from spiritual pawns. It should be students that are participating in the hunting war like us. Luo Li said with a little astonishment as she suddenly glanced far ahead. Mu Chen wasn't very interested in that as he had been racking his brains on how to obtain more spiritual lights. This was the first time that he brought Luo Li along in cultivation. If they were to return empty-handed, then he would be too useless. There must be some rules in the spiritual light realm and our first time here made us totally unfamiliar with the information. Therefore, solving the problem of information is the priority right now. Luo Li smiled. Mu Chen was startled and, shortly after, his face was replaced with a smile. We have some spiritual lights in our hands. At worst, we could make an exchange for information with the spiritual lights. If they refuse to agree to the terms, then they can't blame us for being unreasonable, right? Hearing his last words, Luo Li couldn't help rolling her eyes at him as she appeared extremely charming. Mu Chen, on the other hand, was excited as he flew out with Luo Li. In about 10 minutes, they saw that there was a battle on a hill up ahead. But, to their astonishment, it wasn't a battle between students and spiritual spawns, but a battle between students. There seemed to be over a dozen students circling 3 students. Those 3 students were clearly no match for them. Under that encirclement, they were heading further and further into a disadvantage and would lose at any time. And Ran, we don't want to make things hard for you. Tell us about all the spiritual spawns gathering points that you know and we'll let you leave. Outside the battle, a lean and slender youth was chuckling as he looked at those three that were gradually losing. Among those three who were being ganged up on, there was the figure of An Ran, who Mu Chen had met before when he had just entered the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. Liu Chen, you can dream on. An Ran's face flushed red as her eyes became filled with wrath. She tightly clenched her teeth as she added, "You disgusting bastard. Even if I was to be kicked out of the hunting war, I won't let you guys know the gathering points. I don't believe that you would dare to kill me here." The youth who was named as Liu Chen coldly smiled in reply as his gaze swept over An Ran's well-developed figure as he gave a weird smile. "Indeed, I don't dare to kill you. However, all of us here are males, and if we were to have a slip and accidentally touch or grab you, don't take it personally. I believe that you won't be able to report me about this matter, right?" When An Ran heard his threats, her face instantly turned pale as she trembled. "Therefore, An Ran, don't make things unpleasant. As long as you tell us about those locations, we can even bring you along and you can have a share of the spiritual lights. What do you think of my suggestion?" Liu Chen smiled with his eyes narrowed. An Ran tightly clenched her teeth. Her two companions were also female. Faced with the delinquent threats from Liu Chen and his group, their faces flushed red from anger, but they could not do anything. "Ha, I think that there's nothing great about this suggestion." However, when she was about to speak, a laughter sounded out from far away. Shortly after, two light figures flew over and appeared before An Ran and her group. "Mu Chen." An Ran looked at the handsome youth before her as she exclaimed in surprise. "Mu Chen." When the group that was surrounding Su Ran and her group heard a name that wasn't unfamiliar to them, their gazes changed as deep fear rose within their eyes. Although Mu Chen had just entered the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy for only a few months, his reputation within the academy could be comparable to, or even more superior than some of the outstanding seniors. The guy that was named Liu Chen's face slightly changed as he glanced at Mu Chen and Luo Li. "This matter isn't related to the both of you, why are you casually meddling in? If it's possible, once I obtain the information, I can share it with the both of you. At that time, we might even be able to join hands together." Likewise, he feared Mu Chen. However, he wasn't willing to let An Ran off. In the hunting war, because of the time restraint, information was the most important. If they could not find the gathering points of the spiritual spawns fast enough, then they wouldn't be able to gather sufficient spiritual lights. If that's the case, then the effects of the spiritual light empowerment would not be effective. He possessed a quasi-heavenly transformation stage cultivation as well. If everyone else was included, then it wouldn't be easy for Mu Chen and Luo Li to deal with them if they were to confront each other. When An Ran heard the conversation, she clenched her teeth and added, "Mu Chen, lend us a hand and we'll give you the information." At this moment, she was full of loath for Liu Chen. She would rather give the information to Mu Chen than to let these fellows benefit from it. Mu Chen lightly smiled as he looked at Liu Chen. "Senior apprentice sister An Ran is my friend. Take your people and leave." Although his relationship with An Ran wasn't too deep, he didn't like Liu Chen too much. Furthermore, the latter's strength had still not reached to the point that it would make Mu Chen fear him. Since that's the case, then he would naturally act on his own preferences. "You?" When Liu Chen heard what Mu Chen had said, his eyes instantly flickered with ferocity. His face turned dull and, shortly after, he gave a signal with his eyes to his companions. The latter immediately pulled themselves away from the encirclement of An Ran and her two companions as they looked at Mu Chen with bad intentions. "Leave him to me, you can deal with the rest," Mu Chen lightly said to Luo Li. "Okay." Luo Li nodded. The highest cultivation among that group was only a heavenly fusion stage late phase and posed no pressure to her. "Just the two of you want to deal with so many of us?" Liu Chen grounded his teeth as he sneered. However, before he finished his speech, Mu Chen already burst towards his direction. "Stop him!" Liu Chen barked when he saw the situation. The spiritual energy within his body surged forth. That group of a dozen also burst forth with spiritual energy. However, before they could act, they saw Mu Chen's figure turn into a streak of light, and the sound of a solemn roar of a dragon sounded out. Rustle. The light figure passed through their obstruction with an indescribable speed. Thereafter, before Liu Chen could react, a slender palm had already softly landed on the latter's chest. Liu Chen looked at Mu Chen, who had mysteriously appeared before him. His pupils immediately shrank and his face was filled with horror. The latter's speed was simply too fearsome. Bang! A violent spiritual energy surged out from Mu Chen's palm, and Liu Chen felt as though he was hit by a huge hammer and instantly flew away. After he created a long mark on the ground and clashed against a huge rock, the rock instantly crumbled and that unlucky fellow fainted. He thought that he could confront Mu Chen with his strength at the quasi-heavenly transformation stage. But who would have expected that although the both of them had cultivated to the quasi-heavenly transformation stage, the distance between the two of them was as different as the heavens and earth. Bang! Bang! Just as Mu Chen easily dealt with Liu Chen, an urgent spiritual energy ripple came from his rear. When Mu Chen turned his head over, he saw a dozen unlucky fellows falling to the ground, one after another, as they wailed in pain. Among them was a young girl wearing black clothes as she lightly patted her hands before blinking her big eyes towards Mu Chen. Formidable. Mu Chen gave her a big thumbs up before looking at Anran's group and smiled. Senior apprentice sister Anran, are you all right? Anran shook her head as she looked at Mu Chen, as well as Luo Li, with a complicated gaze. A few months ago, Mu Chen's strength was just at the spirit realm, and who could have expected that in just a few short months, this newcomer had already far surpassed her. Those two ladies beside Anran were also beautiful, as they stealthily looked at Mu Chen. Clearly, they were curious towards this newcomer who had soaring fame in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. What is the so-called gathering point? Mu Chen did not say anything unnecessary and said the main subject. Right now, what they needed the most was information regarding the spiritual light realm. Within the spiritual light realm, although the spiritual energy is vast in this region, it isn't easy for spiritual pawns to gather in one place. At ordinary places, it wasn't easy to search for places with huge amounts of spiritual pawns and spiritual knights. And Ran was also straightforward. She knew that half of the reason why Mu Chen gave her a helping hand was because of the information that she held. Therefore, she restrained her sigh as she spoke. However, due to the terrain, some places have large amounts of spiritual spawns, which we call the gathering point. As long as we find those gathering points, we will be able to obtain a large amount of spiritual lights. Otherwise, even if we searched the entire spiritual light realm, we wouldn't be able to obtain enough spiritual lights. Mu Chen and Luo Li suddenly understood in a flash. No wonder they only encountered sparse amounts of spiritual spawns along their way here. So it turned out that there were some rules to the spiritual light realm. Where did senior apprentice sister Anran obtain the information about the gathering points from? Mu Chen inquired along with a little astonishment. This kind of information can be purchased from the spiritual value hall. Except, the price is expensive. Furthermore, there would be some changes to the gathering points every single year. Therefore, no one dares to be certain that the information would be useful. And the information that we purchased was collected by the three of us. Anran bitterly smiled. Who could have expected that this news was known to Liu Chen, which caused this matter to break out? It could be purchased from the spiritual value hall? Mu Chen was stunned, and shortly after, he inhaled a mouthful of air. They were, indeed, newcomers and, hence, weren't familiar with important information like this and could only charge into the spiritual light realm without any plans. I'll tell the both of you the location of the gathering points. Anran's face was a little dull. However, she did not forget her earlier promise towards Mu Chen and could only admit to have bad luck. Anran, as well as the two girls beside her, lightly sighed. Their strengths were still a little too weak. In the hunting war, with more and more black horses emerging, it would be hard for them to obtain any achievements. Looking at the three beautiful ladies that dispiritedly hung their heads, Mu Chen couldn't help smiling helplessly. Why did it feel like he's committing a crime? Senior apprentice sister Anran, we're newcomers, after all. Therefore, we are not familiar with the spiritual light realm. Why don't we trouble you to bring us along? We don't have any thoughts of monopolizing everything, and the spiritual lights that we get could be split equally between us. And Ran and the two other girls were startled. Shortly after, they raised their heads and stared at Mu Chen with surprise filling their eyes. Can we really? Generally speaking, no one believed that they could find enough spiritual lights. The more spiritual lights they obtained, the greater the benefits they could obtain from the spiritual light empowerment. And, right now, Mu Chen was actually willing to split the spiritual lights equally with them. With his absolute strength, he clearly didn't have the need to give them such treatment. Mu Chen gently smiled at them. He also knew the importance of the spiritual lights. However, there was also something called proper exchange. Otherwise, his actions wouldn't have much difference for Liu Chen and his group. What protective feelings for the fairer sex. Luo Li lightly turned her head as she said softly with a smile, yet, at the same time, not a smile. Mu Chen could only awkwardly smile helplessly. Senior apprentice sister and Ran, lead the way. We have to get there as fast as possible. Mu Chen looked at the trio, who were still joyful, and smiled. Okay. And Ran immediately nodded her head. After distinguishing some directions, she flew out first with Mu Chen and the rest followed right after her. Mu Chen, the gathering points that we know about were purchased from the Spiritual Value Hall. Therefore, at the same time when we purchased them, there should also be other students that did the same as us. As they were quickly flying to the so-called gathering point, and Ran also seized the moment to inform Mu Chen of the possible troubles that they could encounter. What you mean is that there are other students that have their eyes on the gathering points as well? Mu Chen's brow slightly frowned. It seemed like it won't be easy to obtain the spiritual lights in the hunting war. There's a possibility. And Ran wasn't especially certain, but it was certainly better if there weren't any people and they could monopolize everything at the gathering point. However, if they were to encounter other people, it won't be too peaceful. If the other party possessed sufficient strength, they could banish them from the raid. We'll think about it again at that time. Mu Chen said after some pondering. With his current strength, along with Luo Li, even if they were to encounter some troubles, he wasn't afraid. If there was anyone that tried to threaten them through strength, then he wouldn't mind giving them a taste of their own medicine. When Ran saw Mu Chen's calm expression without any worries, she felt relieved. It seemed that the current Mu Chen was no longer that freshman Mu Chen from back then. Their route was rather peaceful. Although they had encountered quite a bit of students along their way, they were all looking at them passing by with their guards up. Clearly, they did not have any intention to fight them. After about half an hour, Mu Chen could feel Ran's speed gradually slowing down. We will soon reach it. And Ran's voice caused Mu Chen's spirit to shake. Glancing far away, he was, indeed, able to sense abnormal spiritual energy fluctuations from far away. A few minutes later, Mu Chen and his group landed on a mountain peak. Their lines of sight were directed ahead of them. There was a crater surrounded by several mountain peaks fluctuating with brilliant lights as a light figure hovered above with astonishing spiritual energy ripples that were spreading from it. There was at least 1,000 of them. What a great amount of spiritual spawns. Mu Chen looked at the astonishing amount of spiritual spawns and his face started to turn grave, little by little. There seemed to be a stronger existence at the center of the group. Luo Li said with a soft voice as she directed her sight towards the center. When Mu Chen heard her words, he also directed his gaze over. Indeed, he saw a huge light figure at the center of the group as a tyrannical spiritual energy pressure was being emitted from its body. The ripples far surpassed the other spiritual spawns. Mu Chen concentrated his gaze. That's a spiritual knight? In the huge crater, the spiritual energy was extremely dazzling as it looked like a spiritual energy ocean with many light figures floating within. Although they did not have any consciousness, from the huge amount that had gathered, the spiritual energy had already reached a frightening degree. The spiritual pawns here were terrifyingly huge in numbers. If they were replaced with humans of equal strength, there would be thousands of heavenly fusion stage experts. If they were all added together, even those of the heavenly fusion stage would be destroyed by them. But, fortunately, those spiritual pawns did not possess any consciousness. Otherwise, Mu Chen and his group would have had to run for their lives. So many spiritual pawns. And Ran and her group were dumbfounded as they looked at the scene before them. Shortly after, they couldn't help looking at Mu Chen. How are we going to act? Mu Chen's brows were knitted together. Aside from the huge amount of spiritual pawns, there was also an existence in the depths that was comparable to heavenly transformation stage, the spiritual night. They were comparable to a small army. Our numbers are small and I'm afraid that we won't be able to take over this place. Luo Li's brows slightly knitted together. Even though the spiritual pawns here didn't possess any consciousness, even if they only knew how to use simple attacks, if they combined together, it would still be extremely frightening. Not to mention that on their side, they only had 5 people, with her and Mu Chen being the strongest in the group. If they had to rely on the 2 of them to deal with this huge amount of spiritual pawns, as well as the spiritual night that was hidden in the depths, this would undoubtedly be really exhausting for them. And it was, naturally, unwise for them to exhaust a huge amount of their strength. Furthermore, Luo Li's pupils glanced around the surrounding mountains and lightly added, "We aren't the only one that had our eyes on here." She could vaguely sense some concealed auras. Clearly, they weren't the only ones there. However, everyone that had noticed this place had the same thoughts as them, as they did not possess the ability to swallow this fat lamb. Mu Chen nodded as he had also sensed some of the concealed undulated spiritual energies. His eyes flickered and glanced towards the mountain. Shortly after, he lightly smiled as his robust voice echoed, "Everyone, why the need to hide? The amount of spiritual pawns here isn't little and no individual party is capable of taking it all. Since that's the case, why don't we work together?" His voice resounded throughout the mountains. However, there weren't any movements from those spiritual pawns that had gathered in large numbers. They did not have any consciousness to the point that they could not even be called life forms. At best, they could only be considered relatively condensed spiritual energies. Therefore, Mu Chen wasn't afraid that he would alarm them. As Mu Chen's words sounded out, the mountains were quiet for a few minutes before a gale of wind broke out. Several figures came out of their hiding places, one after another, and were floating in the sky. The amount wasn't small, roughly a few dozen. They formed separate circles to clearly differentiate that they were from different groups. Mu Chen glanced past those figures that were up in the sky as a trace of astonishment flashed through his eyes. He could clearly sense that those teams had heavenly transformation stage figures amongst them. Although their strengths were only at the heavenly transformation stage initial phase, this could already prove their strengths. Indeed, worthy of being the hunting war. The strength of many people has increased. Mu Chen sighed in his heart. Generally speaking, those with strength at the heavenly transformation stage could compete with the top 20 of the heavenly ranking. But, clearly, in this hunting war, the amount of heavenly transformation stage initial phase experts would have quite a huge change. Henceforth, the strength of a heavenly transformation stage initial phase expert would be far from sufficient to enter into the top 20 of the heavenly ranking. "My name is Mu Chen. I wonder how should I address everyone?" Mu Chen smiled as he cupped his hands towards the crowd. Hearing that name, many people glanced at Mu Chen with astonishment as this name wasn't unfamiliar in the entire Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy. "Ha ha, so it was the famous junior apprentice brother Mu Chen. I've long heard of your name. My name is Lin Feng." A youth also smiled as he cupped his hands in return. He was the leader of an estimated 10-man group. Liu Zhong. Another youthful leader cupped his hands and declared, "Chen Peng." A skinny youth also nodded as his face was filled with arrogance. Those 3 were the leaders of the 3 groups and their strengths were also the strongest amongst them with heavenly transformation stage initial phase strengths. No wonder those people that followed them had faith in them. Mu Chen lightly smiled. "I believe that everyone is clear that the amount of spiritual pawns gathered in this area is too much, to the point that no one could take them down by themselves. Why don't we cooperate and work together? As for the distribution of spiritual light, it'd depend on our individual abilities. What do you say?" When the 3 leaders heard Mu Chen's suggestion, their eyes flickered with light. Lin Feng and Liu Zhong didn't have any objections, whereas Chen Peng glanced at Mu Chen from up high before shaking his head. "We are the ones who discovered this place first. You want us to split some of it to you guys the instant you get here? This isn't such a good thing. Among the three groups, Chen Peng's group had the most people and was also the strongest in strength. They originally wanted to defeat the spiritual pawns that were here slowly, but who could have expected that this place would be found by two other groups? Henceforth, they hiddenly stood against the confrontation and, all of a sudden, Mu Chen suddenly appeared. Furthermore, from the looks of it, they also wanted to have a share of the spiritual pawns. Although Chen Peng had heard of Mu Chen before, he wasn't too afraid of him. With his strength at the heavenly transformation stage initial phase, even in the Northern Heaven Spiritual Academy, he could be considered as outstanding. Adding the formation behind him, he wasn't too willing to split this cake with them. Hearing the contempt in his words, Ran and her group was a little furious. But due to the power that the other party possessed, they did not dare to say anything. Then, what does Brother Chen Peng want? Mu Chen lightly smiled. No one could clearly see through the expression in his black pupils. How about this? It wasn't easy for you guys to get here. If you guys help us, when all of the spiritual pawns are eliminated, we'll give you guys 100 spiritual lights. What do you say? Said Chen Peng. 100 spiritual lights? Mu Chen's brows twitched. Shortly after, he laughed. It seems that Brother Chen Peng believes that we do not possess the strength to split this cake. Chen Peng did not comment and quietly circulated the spiritual energy within his body. Although he was arrogant, he was also cautious. Although this Mu Chen that stood before him only had strength at the quasi-heavenly transformation stage, it was said that not even those of the heavenly transformation stage initial phase could do a thing to him. But after all, they were superior in terms of numbers. So if a fight were to break out, they could absolutely suppress the other team. Mu Chen lightly smiled as Luo Li stepped forth from his side. When Chen Peng saw Luo Li's actions, his body tensed up. The dozens of people that stood behind him immediately turned cautious as they revealed considerable fighting experience and cooperation. If you can withstand a sword from me, then we'll become your cannon fodder for free. Luo Li's jade-like hand slightly tightened her grip on her sword hilt. Her pupils stared at Chen Peng as her voice was clear and calm. What an arrogant tone of voice. Chen Peng smiled from extreme anger. Rustle. However, before his smile stopped, Luo Li had already thrown a stab forth as a torrential sword aura shot out. It was like a brilliant ray of light as it instantly ripped the horizon apart. A deep sword light burst forth ahead of Luo Li. When that sword aura shot out, Chen Peng's face drastically changed. However, he still had some ability, after all, as he unleashed a bark with his spiritual energy bursting out from his body and rapidly turned into a spiritual energy light barrier before him. Just when the spiritual energy light barrier took form, a brilliant sword aura shot against it, causing the light barrier to waver. Thereafter, it was torn apart under Chen Peng's dumbstruck gaze. A streak of blood appeared on Chen Peng's face and even several strands of his hair was severed, making him appear to be in a sorry state. When the dozen of people behind Chen Peng saw that he could not even withstand a move, their faces drastically changed. Their gazes were filled with shock as they looked at Luo Li, who was sheathing her sword as she stood behind Mu Chen. Even Lin Feng and Liu Zhon's expressions were focused as they looked towards Luo Li with grave expressions. They never imagined that such a stunning lady would be so formidable. Does any of you still have any opinions? Mu Chen once again directed his eyes towards Chen Peng, who was frightened. His voice was light, but within his black pupils, there was already chill light gathering within. If Chen Peng still refused to be tactful, then he would have to take some trouble to chase them away. Chen Peng lightly clenched his teeth. After all, he wasn't an idiot. Although Mu Chen's group was few in numbers, the strength that they showed was more than sufficient to keep them intimidated. Okay. He wasn't an effeminate person. Since Mu Chen and his group possessed the sufficient strength to have a share of this cake, he would be seeking trouble if he continued to obstruct them. Ha ha. Junior apprentice brother Mu Chen is, indeed, someone that even Li Xiantong could not do anything against. Lin Feng laughed as he praised, we have no opinions against your suggestion. So are we. Liu Zhon nodded his head as well. Mu Chen lightly smiled. Since that's the case, then I hope that we'll have a good time cooperating with each other. Mu Chen's line of sight shifted towards the crater where the undulated spiritual energy was like the ocean. The sight of it raised a heat that flashed through his eyes. If they could dispose of all those spiritual pawns, then it would definitely be a huge harvest for them. Everyone, get ready to start. Otherwise, the longer we drag this on, the more people will gather towards this location. Mu Chen laughed. Shortly after, the spiritual energy within his body surged out in waves as it soared into the clouds like black smoke. Okay. Lin Feng, Liu Zhong, and Chen Peng acknowledged as they circulated the spiritual energies within them, and their majestic spiritual energies instantly fluctuated, filling the void between the heavens and earth. Just when Mu Chen and the rest were getting ready to destroy this gathering point, there were several concealed gazes that were fixed onto them somewhere in the depths of the mountain range. Ha ha, big brother, they are about to start, are we still just going to observe them? The voice sounded like a laughter. Lin Feng and the rest are just trivial matters. However, the two freshmen, Mu Chen and Luo Li, are a little thorny. But no worries, the three of us have concealed ourselves for so long, and now, it's time to reveal our strengths. After this hunting war, there will definitely be a spot for us in the top 10 of the heavenly ranking. Another voice sounded out, it was also a faint laughter. Up ahead of them was a slender figure, and his gaze was indifferently looking towards the crater's direction. His faint voice was ice-cold with mockery. Let them deal with those spiritual pawns, and, at that time, all we have to do is conclude it, as well as leave 100 spiritual lights to express our gratitude. Ha ha, Big Brother is so generous. This video will end here.